I'll get us rolling.
All right.
This is generally the time when Brian and I would be walking out of here and talking about the movie. We're in the rare chance we can do it with a whole room full of people and one of the stars. I just had a couple thoughts just off the top of my head about independent cinema. Just having gone through this film and really, with mainstream cinema, you pretty much see things coming before they actually happen because there's a formula. Now, what I saw in here, it could have gone any number of ways at any given number of points in time. There were points where actually I turned to Brian and said, you know, Barry Pepper and Cole Hauser are both action stars. This movie could jump off at any second. Soon afterwards, they punched each other in the face. That was it. But as far as how dark it could have gone any which way. And as far as how light it could have gone any which way. And I'm glad it sort of took us on those directions. It sort of brought us out to the worst it could have gotten. I'm watching the shower scene. I'm really feeling really, really terrible. And just how much farther this film could have gone in that direction. But at the same time, and their hope to escape, and there's real hope there, and it actually could have happened. But then there's this looming potential for disaster, which eventually comes to fruition, and that could have gone even worse. So it's this possibility of anything could happen was just so refreshing.
Yeah, I remember reading the script, and that being the first thing that I wrote in my journal was, how do you build this film in such a way that your audience is leaving the theater dialoguing in an empathetic way and an understanding way about all three couples, regardless of their circumstance. How do you do that? It was a real fine line, a real sort of balancing act, because there's really antithesis, a real juxtaposition of emotions and spirituality and circumstance, privilege, and between all of these different these three different families. And so that was the first question that I had for the director when he offered me either Jack or Rip. Was how are we gonna? It didn't really matter to me which role I played, although Rip completely terrified me, and so I ended up choosing that role because I was interested in that exploration. But was just how do we achieve that? How do we? And I don't know whether we did or not, but that was what we spent the next several weeks doing before we went to camera.
Now, do you think it was a hard film to be able to? At times, it was easy to hate somebody, but at the same time, everybody had their own perspective and their own background. Do you think it's important for films like this to not clearly have a bad guy or good guy? Because there's generally that delineation. Films want to make it easy to say, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, these are who you root for. Do you see a value in that as far as making it difficult to distinguish?
I think in great literature there's ambiguity, and I don't know why exactly films are just supposed to be entertaining. I think that great cinema should also have ambiguity, and so whether you love or hate Rip and Wendy, or Rip in particular, or you see that Jack and Molly and Molly's sister and her husband, and Rip and Wendy are all flawed people looking to sort of complete themselves through the love of this child. That will complete them. That will make them whole as people, as a married couple, as a family. But it really doesn't. That was a constant dialogue on set. Was trying to figure out how you stay away from those well-worn archetypes, those cliches, which were, at least when I read the script, and that was my great fear of not playing Rip, was that in the hands of someone else that it would just be a cliche, because that's the way it read. He was just this brute. He was just this unidentifiable, unlovable brute. He was there was no redeeming quality to him, and that was really the caveat to playing or being a part of the film, was we have to find the humanity in this guy. I mean, he's spiritually vacuous. He's empty. He's lonely, like most alcoholics. They think that when they remove the alcohol that all the problems are going to go away. But it's a cyclical thing for a guy like him. He was damaged in his youth, and then just filled his his vacuousness with alcohol and rage, and then begins to, bring that to his own family. And then when he gets out of prison, he figures that he can complete himself and heal himself by putting his family back together. But all of those deep-seated problems that he's, put away, they rise up again. And that was just a really fascinating exploration for me. And so I had an opportunity to work with a lot of recovering alcoholics and go down into the prisons in Jacksonville, Florida, where we shot this, and spend time with people that were sort of afflicted with that similar illness. And not that every alcoholic is an abuser, that's not at all what I'm saying, but just spent time with people that were dealing with those same sort of issues, and it was fascinating. I remember the first day of principal photography, waking up in my hotel room at 4 a.m. to domestic violence in the room next door. And it was loud, and it was angry, and it was name-calling and volatile. And I immediately judged the man, even though I had no idea what the circumstance was, and she was just as loud and vicious, and the expletives were just going back and forth between them. But it was kind of terrifying, and I ended up, I think, calling down, but whatever. But I just thought, how interesting that is that I immediately judged him. I thought, that bastard, I'm going to go and kick his ass, And I thought, well, maybe I better make a phone call instead. Yeah, it was just fascinating. Anyway, sorry, we're getting way off topic here. If you guys have any questions, just go ahead.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, Barry, that I think you're a very talented actor, and I'm personally very proud that you're from Vancouver Island.
Oh, thank you kindly. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to...
That wasn't a question.
You were talking about dealing with... yes, go ahead.
What did he go to jail for?
It was abuse, domestic violence. Yeah, 7 years. And I haven't seen the film in quite a long time, but he is reformed in prison, working with through the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous with a pastor that is a prison pastor. And a big part of the 12-step programs is to replace that vacuousness with some form of spirituality rather than finding validation through people. Replacing the validation of people with the validation of God or spirituality. And so he comes out reformed, but like I say, as soon as sort of those age-old insecurities and demons sort of rise up in him again, he's unable to combat them because he just was never really given any tools as a young man from his father, and so it's just sort of this cyclical thing.
Well, I was going to say, I think I heard a collective sigh or gasp as Rip opened the bottle in his truck. I mean, I gasped a little bit, but I could hear it all around me. So I think there was a real identification that, I think people were rooting for reform,
yeah.
But sort of witnessing the fall and I guess the beginning of what was the return of the dark side of Rip. Is there anybody else who has any questions?